Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We can pretend like we are back on the campus of Ann Arbor, Dearborn, or Flint, and I will welcome you to come to the front of the room, take up these front rows of seats. And as you're coming in, please feel free to put in the chat where you're joining us from. I am joining this webinar from Ann Arbor, Michigan. All right, so as everyone is filing in, we'll go ahead and get started, and you're welcome to catch up with us. Hello and welcome to our University of Michigan alumni and friends. My name is Kiara Trotter, and I'm the Director of Alumni Career and Education at your Alumni Association. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Thank you for joining this month's webinar, Transitioning to Entrepreneurship. If you've attended our webinars before, you'll notice a change in today's format. We're pleased to have two speakers with us today. The first is career coach Hallie Crawford, and the second is U of M alum, lecturer, and entrepreneur, Rishi Narayan. Sorry, Rishi Narayan. There we go. I think that was right. Thank you. Today's webinar will be divided into three parts. First, Hallie will give a 30-minute presentation, and that will be followed by an introduction to Rishi and his career path. And then we'll conclude with a Q&A session with both of today's speakers. And we hope that this webinar will support your exploration of entrepreneurial endeavors, whether you're transitioning to entrepreneurship as a career shift, as an encore career, or as a way to create multiple income streams. For continued access to U of M resources for alumni entrepreneurs, feel free to explore the Zell Lurie Institute for Entrepreneurship. They offer virtual office hours, the ZLI Alumni Pitch, the Zell Alumni Summit, and a startup studio. To connect with them, subscribe to their newsletter using the link that will be provided in the chat. All right, so let's take care of a few housekeeping items and then we will get started. First, this is an interactive webinar that is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with you in a follow-up email. Please submit your questions using the Q&A feature in your toolbar, and the chat feature is also available, and you can use the chat feature to engage with other participants throughout the session. We'll do our best to answer all of your questions, but we got quite a few with registration, and I know that this is a hot topic, so we might not be able to get to all of them. Okay, so I'll share a little bit about today's first speaker, and then we're going to dive right in. Hallie Crawford has been a certified career coach, speaker, author, and national career expert since 2002. She is also one of the Alumni Association's preferred partner career coaches. Her company, Create Your Own Career Path, is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, where she is right now with lots of heat and humidity. And she has published numerous books and is regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including CNN, US News, Fox Business News, and the Wall Street Journal. Hallie has undergraduate and graduate degrees from Vanderbilt University and the University of Illinois. With over 2,500 success stories, her team of coaches and resume writers help professionals find jobs that make them want to jump out of bed in the morning and go to work. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Hallie, and in about 30 minutes, we'll come back and we'll talk about Rishi.
Perfect. That sounds great. And jump out of bed to go to work in the morning being an entrepreneur or side gig or whatever the situation is. I'm really excited to be here with you all today to talk about transitioning into entrepreneurship as a possibility. This is near and dear to my heart because I've been an entrepreneur since 2002. My running joke is most of my gray hair is underneath here, but starting to come up a little bit more. So we already had a great introduction, so I won't belabor this part, but I've been coaching and training since 2002. I'm currently based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I originally started my company when I lived in Chicago. The advice that we're going to give you all today is advice from my own personal experience, but also through coaching our clients who decide or who are considering entrepreneurship in any way, shape, or form. And we're going to talk today about how to make that decision. What are the things that you want to consider or really be mindful of when you're considering being an entrepreneur in some way, shape, or form? We would recommend at the end here today that you choose one action step that makes the most sense for you because you're going to get a lot of great, useful, helpful information from both myself and Rishi as well. And remember too, you can revisit the recording later. We also are happy to share our slides, and we'll get you the QR code for that and link in the chat box as well. You can pick up where you left off with, but pick the action step that makes the most sense for you based on where you are in your journey considering being an entrepreneur. So, one of the first things that I wanted to share is that obviously, I think we all know this, but transitioning into any new career path, including entrepreneurship, it takes a lot of commitment. And one of the things that, before I share a little bit more about what's on this slide, that I want to say is that, I do think when you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, that being passionate about or really enthusiastic about what it is you're wanting to get into is a critically important piece of the whole thing. Because we've all heard that saying, right? And I kind of want to frame this out a little bit. We've all heard that saying, do what you love and the money will follow. Well, what I always say to people is yes and no to that, because I worked very hard and have worked very hard since inception to get my business going, keep it going and running and growing, et cetera, et cetera. But what I will say is because I love what I do as a career coach and have a passion and enthusiasm, not just for career coaching and helping people find the right career path for themselves, but I also kind of luckily have a passion for business too. So I'm pretty motivated the majority of the time to run my business. And so please know that while I do believe that when you do what you love, the money does follow, it's not like you're not working for it. It's just that it feels less like work because you're really enjoying it. So this isn't just, oh, it's everything's gonna, fall in your lap. It does take a lot of commitment and hard work. But if you're doing something or launching something that you truly believe in, it makes a big difference. And the reasons why it does take a lot of commitment, especially these days, is if you look at this first slide here, there's a lot of new technology out there. We need to understand when we're thinking about entrepreneurship, how does technology play into and make me or help me be better at being an entrepreneur? How do I need to leverage AI when I'm considering launching my business or providing my services or products or whatever it is that you're thinking about? There's a lot of different steps to take, and this is why it requires commitment. One of the mistakes that I made early on and had to kind of tone down and figure out is I had bright, shiny object syndrome, and I wanted to try everything at the beginning instead of saying, these are the 2 or 3 things I'm going to focus on first in Q1, Q2, et cetera, et cetera. I tried to do too many things at once. So there are a lot of steps to take. Break it out into a plan for yourself so that you can say, let me tackle these things first. If you are thinking about, with our third bullet point here on the slide, if you're thinking about entrepreneurship on the side, which is what I did, I started my company when I was working actually at a university in Chicago. And I quit that position 2 years into growing my business because that was the time when I was making about the same amount of money through coaching as I was there too. So one of the kind of challenges I think for entrepreneurs is, where am I going to fit this in with my schedule? And then finally, and a big part of what we're going to be talking about today is, how do I make this move? What's the best thing for me to be thinking about? And how do I make that transition? And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So here's the good news: is it is possible to transition into entrepreneurship. It does require, as we've already started to say, and I'll just piggyback on this for a second, it requires time, it requires a lot of effort, it requires patience too, right? Because I'm not a patient person. And as I was saying a moment ago, I wanted to do everything at once. You need to break things out into chunks. It requires persistence because you're going to have ebbs and flows. Things are going to go well. You're going to have downtime sometimes too. So you've got to be persistent to work through any of those challenges that come your way, the things that you need to learn and adjust in order to do better. The other thing that I would say it requires too is it requires that willingness to take risks. And I fortunately I actually have a value of risk and a high tolerance for it. And this is the one that I think about or talk with my clients about frequently to say, okay, what is your risk tolerance here to help them figure out whether being an entrepreneur is going to be okay for them? Or is it better maybe to work with a franchise or purchase a franchise or work with someone else to help mitigate that risk? As I shared a moment ago, one of the ways I mitigated risk at the beginning was I was still working almost full time. So I could try it out and see how it went. So that's one of the things that I want you all to think about is what's your kind of risk tolerance? And then finally, it also requires this practicality, like what's the smartest and best way for me to work through this in a practical sense so that I'm taking care of myself, but also balancing that with the risks that I need to take to make this happen. So we would love to see what people's greatest like fear or concern is related to entrepreneurship, because usually people have several of them. And please know that this is normal and doesn't mean if you have any of these concerns, it doesn't mean that entrepreneurship is the wrong thing for you. I would actually say if you don't have some fears, there's probably something wrong there because you might go a little bit too crazy with it. So give us just your sense of this really quickly for this poll, if you would. And it's okay, by the way, if you've got several of these going on. You're not alone. It's totally normal. And what you want to be doing is saying, okay, how can I move past this? What do I need to do to see this as a challenge to overcome versus, something standing in my way? And while we're doing this poll, I'm just going to share the basics a little bit more about what we're going to do today. We kind of already covered our agenda, but I'll share that as well as the QR code if anyone would like to grab the slides.
Okay, so it looks like most people have weighed in on the poll,
Okay,
so I'll
great.
go ahead and share the results.
Yeah. Okay, great. The financial, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. The financial piece, a huge one. So this is part of what you want to be thinking about with your plan. Then we've got the work-life balance, right? Like we said, it takes a lot of work and effort, the tough economy. I'm glad that this one's a little bit lower because I don't want people, just because the economy may not seem a perfect time to do this, I don't want that to hold you back. I would say there's almost no perfect time. You just want to get it going, right? And then I'd love to see in the chat box what people are ranking here for the other. Just to love to see your thoughts there too. So as part of this financial piece, and thanks again for taking the poll and sharing this, we want you to think about how to take care of yourself financially. It could be like we just talked about, where you continue working. It could be that you have a few different gigs going on so that you're still paying your bills. Some people will do a combination of like savings. They'll do like some starting fundraising, or you know what I mean? Like, I can't remember if there's websites that do that. We'll get to that in a minute and I'll look it up. But where you can get funding for your entrepreneurship, whatever it is, your venture that you're working on. So lots of different ways to think about that, and we can talk about that more in Q&A too. So one of the first things, as you're considering this and starting to think about it, when you're thinking about what's your big idea, the thing that you want to launch into entrepreneurship wise, it's a really good idea as much as possible to like make it as narrow and clear for yourself as possible. And what I mean by this is, what are you offering? What are you wanting to provide in the world, so to speak? And as we said earlier, it's a good idea if you've got some really strong belief or strength in that area, or I will tell you this too. In some cases, some of our clients who are interested in entrepreneurship will literally say, like, I just have a passion for small business. And I feel like that's okay too. As long as that's the case and you feel like whatever service or product it is you're providing to the world, like you really believe in it and feel like it's a good product, you're offering something that's positive and helpful, you're good to go. Okay. But as part of what you want to be thinking about is obviously understanding in advance, like doing a SWOT analysis to say, okay, here's my idea. Here are my thoughts about what I might want to be doing. Where are the strengths that I have in order to make this happen? And are there like places, areas, et cetera, where I can get support in order to make this happen? What are the weaknesses or the challenges that I might encounter? What are the opportunities here and what are the threats? And this is part of looking at market analysis to understand where what you want to do kind of, is there a lot of competition? Is there less competition? So I'd like to spend the majority of my time here today before we get to Q&A, talking a little bit more about how to identify whether this is a fit for you as a person and as a professional. And I'd like to use our ideal career model to help you kind of think through this and structure your thinking in the right way so that you're covering your bases when you're thinking about being an entrepreneur. And I honestly wish I had this when I was considering it. I did put some thought into being a coach, but I'll be honest with you, my thinking at the time was more about, I think career coaching is great. This is my calling. I'm passionate about that, much less about business. I don't have my MBA. I honestly did not take any business classes in undergrad or in my master's degree. And so luckily, I just kind of found that and got lucky that I had a knack for business and I was able to find the right people to support me along the way. So let's talk about this slide for a second. When we look at our ideal career model for entrepreneurship, or really anyone's career path, these are the components that we want you to consider in order to know if this is the right fit for you. So we are looking at all of these 8 things, and I want to walk through these with you as it relates to entrepreneurship for just a moment. So first of all, what we want you to be thinking about with being an entrepreneur is, okay, what I'm thinking about either launching or getting into, will this be rewarding and fulfilling to me? Do I have like an intrinsic motivation to like run a business or create a product or service or offer that up? And I say this because some of our clients joke with me and they'll be like, well, how do you work from home all the time and like do your own thing? I'm afraid that I would just sit on the couch and watch TV and, snack on chips or whatever it is. And I get that. And what I explain to them is I love what I do and the thing that I'm offering, like I said, and I also enjoy running a small business. But there's also that motivation, obviously, of you got to pay your bills. But you do want to think about this. Do you have that inherent kind of motivation and the way of thinking and strength that you can structure yourself and your life and your work on your own versus having someone provide that to you too? And we'll talk about that more when we discuss work environment. So that's the fulfillment piece. I do think it's important to have some kind of drive for either what you're offering in the business itself, like we said. This goes along with interests as well. I think this plays into it, and I'll use me just as a really quick example. So career coaching or being a career coach is very rewarding and fulfilling for me, as like I can do that all day long and not get sick of it. But the other things that I found I was interested in as well, but also had enough strengths in, was marketing and sales and all that other stuff that you have to do with running a business. Now, I'll tell you, financial stuff I'm not great at. So I do get help with that. And that's where I need to kind of fill the gap the most with my team. But it's good to be able to say to yourself, you know what, I have these other interests and strengths as well. And this is where I could do really well with the business. And also with the W, with the SWOT analysis, the areas where you might need help. So think also about, where are your strengths? Are you great with, for example, business planning, innovation, marketing, sales, anything else? Because if you can identify what these strengths are, then you know where you're going to shine in the business and where you want to, start out at the beginning versus where you may need a little bit of help. You can take a strengths finder assessment. There's lots of good strengths assessments, even free ones online that you can find. But it's a really good idea up front before you launch into this to say, are my strengths aligned with being an entrepreneur? Where might I need a little bit of help, or where do I need to beef things up? And the same thing with experience in education. So, are there books or courses that you may need to take in order to fill those gaps for being an entrepreneur, but also with the product or service? So, for me, honestly, I did not take any business courses. I learned along the way and I hired a business coach, which I found to be incredibly helpful. But I did have to go to coaching school to learn how to be a coach and get certified. So you want to think about those things as what do you already have, and are you willing to go get that additional education or experience in order to make this happen? Let's talk next about personality type, which is at the top right here. So thinking about, like we said, what's your risk tolerance? Is it high or is it low? And does that mean it's a good idea, or do you need to be a little more cautious with it? That intrinsic motivation we talked already about. Do you have the type of personality where you can and you're okay working independently and okay to create structure for yourself? Because when you start doing your own thing, I remember the first day when I first quit the job that I had, and I was sitting in my apartment in Chicago, and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? I have my computer, I have my file folders. Are you okay with creating something from scratch? Do you have that type of personality, or do you need to get help with that? The next two things, and the last two things that are not last but not least, but still critically important, is the work environment and your compensation, and considering those things. And when I say work environment, in some cases, I think entrepreneurs, when they're working by themselves, they love working from home. Others need a shared workspace because they get antsy and they're more extroverted. So it's important to think too about what the right work environment is for you. Are you okay to work solo? I'm more introverted actually than extroverted. So for me, it works great. But even I feel like sometimes I need that extrovert time. So I'll like go run errands, do other things, set up meetings with clients, etc. But this work environment thing is critically important. How are you going to set up your office, but everything else too? And then finally, compensation, coming up with and considering and creating your financial plan, the market and competitive analysis, like, is there a need for what you're wanting to do? What is the competition doing? Is the competition too steep? And it's like, ooh, I might need to try something else. And from the research that you do online, finding out like, okay, can I make the type of money I want in the long run? Because at the beginning, obviously, you're going to be making, very little to nothing, whatever it is you need to invest. But you want to be thinking about, obviously, this financial piece. And I'll let you know that when I was starting my coaching practice, I did have financial goals for myself quarterly and annually. And I knew that I'll be honest, at the time, at the beginning, I did kind of want to be like Oprah when I was younger and had more energy and time and all that other good stuff. But over time, I decided, there was a certain place I wanted my business to be, kind of in this, like leaving it in the small range. And that's part of what I want you to think about too, is not just what are the gaps, the threats, the opportunities, all that there, but try to create a vision for your business as well as a plan, so that you've got that picture in your mind of what ideally I would like it to be. It can change over time, and that's fine. You can make adjustments along the way, but I think it's really helpful to start envisioning yourself in that type of role in the long run too, to move you towards it. After you've done the assessment with the model, then you can start to say to yourself, okay, what are the strengths I might need to develop? What's my financial plan? Is there a market for what I'm looking for and what I'm offering? And we do want to talk for a second, because this piggybacks on the poll a little bit as well. As part of your plan too, please be really clear on where your gaps are, what the threats are, and how you're going to deal with those, as well as your internal obstacles too. Because I'll tell you again, these are things that I did not think about as much as I could have at the beginning. And had I incorporated these into my plan a little bit more, where I would get support, where I would, work on the imposter syndrome and all these other things that can happen for us as an entrepreneur, especially when we're first starting out, If you can get support with those things as well and incorporate those into your plan, the reason why I think this is so important is because there's the practical kind of external elements of being an entrepreneur, the plan and executing and all of that. And there's those internal things that you have got to be in the right headspace in order to make this happen and get it to grow. Okay. So if any of you feel like you have a little bit of imposter syndrome related to entrepreneurship, which is where you might feel like, am I really qualified? Do I really know what I'm doing? Don't let that hold you back. Let that be like, okay, these are my little kind of yellow flags to say, what do I need to do to move around these challenges or overcome them? Where do I need to get support with this? Imposter syndrome can be a huge thing, I think, for entrepreneurs, especially because we don't have that external validation of a boss giving us a performance review. We're kind of in our own little bubble, at least at the beginning. And this is where it's important to get that external support, create a team around you, all that other good stuff. And then finally, a couple more thoughts, and then we'll get into our Q&A is another thing to be thinking about when you're considering being an entrepreneur is what are your strengths? What's going to be the value you want to provide? What are your leadership values and strengths if you end up like bringing a team or creating a team around you? And what do you want your brand to be? What do you want to be known for in the market related to what you're offering? And then as part of your planning and goals, we really think it's a good idea to do a few different things. And if we can launch the second poll here, that would be great because we want you to get support as part of your plan, the internal and external support, as we've said. And as you're filling this out, it's a good idea at the very beginning of considering being an entrepreneur to test things out a little bit first. I tested out career coaching while I was working at another job. We had a client that really wanted to be an author, and that was like her dream. She tried it out for about 6 months on the side and discovered it was not the thing for her. She didn't have that risk tolerance. She didn't want to be selling herself as much as she needed to in order to be successful. So it's a really good idea to test it out, create that long-term plan, like we said, make sure that you've got like the operations and systems in place over time, that you're creating those upfront and getting that support too, like we said. So we'd love to hear about your support system, if you have one currently that you can leverage regularly. And we'll see what people said, because this is something that I find is huge, especially for entrepreneurship.
So it looks like the majority of today's participants are saying that they do not yet have a support system.
Okay, this will be a huge one that you want to put on your list. It would be great if you could find some U of M alum who are or have been entrepreneurs who would be willing to like be a mentor along the way, help you out a little bit more, etc. And I want to make sure we get to our Q&A, so I'll pull up this last slide for my portion. From what we've said today, so let me say just really quick, just two other things, and then we'll keep moving with Q&A, is one of the things I feel like I learned, and Rishi can pick up on this and, agree or say something different for his situation and experience, but something that I didn't do as well at the beginning of my business was creating systems and processes for things that then, as I grew and was trying to provide the coaching and doing other things, I had like policies, operations, and those types of things in place. It's kind of like a foundation to stand on, that's really, really important at the beginning. And we would love it if next, as you're starting to think about the questions that you'd like to ask too, if you would write down and even share in the chat box one action step that you will take in the next week, whether it's the SWOT analysis, like we said, using our model, identifying your strengths, or something else. So Kiera, if you want to take the lead, we can start to get into everything else.
Absolutely. All right. So before we move on, quick question for you all, and please put your answers in the chat. If you had to make a guess as to how many alumni, living alumni, we have worldwide, what is that guess? And I will start you out. It is more than 500,000. So put your guesses in the chat, please. How many living alumni do we have? Okay, we have 700,000, 1.5 million, 2 million with a good question mark, 900,000, 800,000, 700,000. Okay, it's good that I started you all off. We have over 680,000 living alumni. And so the reason why we set up this webinar the way that we did today was because with all of these living alumni worldwide, it can be difficult to figure out how do I actually access one person, one alum who can help me, who I can connect with in order to get through this process. And so that's why we're really excited to have Rishi with us here today. Okay, so first, I will introduce Rishi, and then Rishi will share a bit about his path in entrepreneurship, and then we'll move on to our Q&A. All right, so Hallie, if you don't mind, can you stop sharing your slides so people can see Rishi's face live and living color? Okay, so I'll start with the introduction. Rishi Narayan is an entrepreneur and early stage investor based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Rishi has founded several companies, including Underground Printing. Some of you may remember Underground Printing from your undergrad days or grad school days, which is a national custom apparel and collegiate merchandise retailer with locations throughout the country. He is a principal in several angel funds, including Shybor Angels, Raben Group, and Miniseed. In 2015, Rishi became a co-owner of AFC Ann Arbor, an elite amateur soccer club competing in the United Soccer League, a farm system for Major League Soccer. That is pretty cool. More recently, Rishi has founded Podcast United, a collective of local podcasts, and Varsity Pickleball, a pickleball club based in Southeast Michigan. Rishi holds his BSc and MSc in chemical engineering from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and is currently a lecturer for his alma mater in the Center for Entrepreneurship. So Rishi is well equipped to help us out today. So Rishi, I'll turn it over to you to just share a little bit with us about your path to entrepreneurship, and then we'll jump into the Q&A.
Thanks, Kira.
You're
Always
welcome.
fun to listen to your bio read out loud to you. It's like, ugh, it's a little feels a little weird, but thank you for having me and appreciate you doing that. Uh, um, and I really enjoyed Hallie's presentation. Lots to pull from, lots that I wish I had. I wish I had the slide deck, 25 years ago, but I tended to learn the hard way. And I think ultimately everyone learns the hard way when it's all said and done. Doesn't matter what resources you have. But um, just a quick, I know there's lots of questions, so a quick 5 minutes on me. I am born in Indiana, but raised in Okemos, which is right outside East Lansing. My dad's a professor at Michigan State, so there's no state hating in my family. Just ambiguity on who you're rooting for there. But of course, I came to, oh, we got to go green in the chat. Ooh. Um, but I came to Michigan for undergrad, and that's of course where the love affair with the U of M began. So I came to U of M to study chemical engineering because that is what my dad did as well. He's a professor of chemical engineering at Michigan State. I grew up thinking that, I worked in my dad's lab. I was around what he did, and I thought, oh, this is so cool. This is what I want. I was like, I want to be a chemical engineer. And then I think it was sitting in Thermo 2, Thermo 1 or Thermo 2 my sophomore year, and I was like, why is this not like what I thought it was going to be? And what I learned very quickly, very early on in college was that my dad was actually an entrepreneur. He was like licensing technologies, and I was there, kind of immersed in the entrepreneurial side. I just didn't know it. And so uh, I kind of learned pretty early on that was like maybe the path I wanted to go. And uh, continued on, got my degrees, got an extra degree, and got my master's as well as I tried to figure things out. And started underground printing my sophomore year with my partner Ryan Gregg, who I grew up with in Okemos. We both came to Michigan. We were both engineers and both went on to put that degree aside and print t-shirts. So um, the road of all the ins and outs of that are quite you know too long of a story to tell. The few points I would make that hopefully we'll talk more about that relate to transitioning to entrepreneurship is number one, uh while I never transitioned from a career to entrepreneurship, I did transition from being a student to entrepreneur, and they're very similar in terms of uh, having a main focal point, your day job, so to speak, and then what you're doing on the side. And so these days, I lecture, and I'm a faculty for a couple classes in the Center for Entrepreneurship, and I'm a big believer in, starting your side hustle, your side gig. Um, it's really one of the best ways to explore entrepreneurship, and so I'm sure I'll talk a little more about that. Um, and the other thing that I would say is I got really lucky in terms of like starting young. A lot less pressure, and no family, no kids, no mortgage, nothing like that. And I was fortunate enough to have parents help with some of my expenses, and so that afforded me a lot of opportunities. For a lot of you, that's not the case, and I recognize that, and that's why I think this like the true term is transition to entrepreneurship, versus the fun pop culture Shark Tank, which is go all in, drop everything, you know, mortgage everything and go for it. Like that is a very romantic view of how it works. People also win the lottery, it's like it's not that's not real life, unfortunately. So, a lot to learn from shows like that, but there are other paths. So Kira, I don't know if you want me to go any more, but I know we got a bunch of questions, so I'll pause
Yeah,
there.
that is a great start. Thank you. And I am putting the first two questions in the chat if my computer will let me do it. Having a little bit of trouble, but I'll read them to you. So the first one is already in the chat, and we'll start with you, Rishi. What strategies can help manage the challenge of balancing a full-time job while testing a business idea? And when is the right time to transition fully into entrepreneurship? So you started touching on this, like getting your side hustle started. Can you dive
Yeah.
into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'll actually tackle the second question first. The second question being, when is the right time? I don't know that that is answerable. It's different for everybody. I don't think it's even absolutely clear. It's a little bit of a leap of faith. Actually, it's a lot of a leap of faith. Um, but what a side hustle, side gig allows you to do is test things out until you've got just enough data, you've just got enough experience to say, all right, I'm ready to do it. For me, that was going through all of grad school, slowly, slower than everyone else, and getting my master's, and then being like, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready to make the jump, put that degree in the closet as well. So for, like that's what it took for me. And for everybody, it's different, right? It could be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Um, in terms of strategies for managing, I mean, I think that's where I end up kind of landing, and that has changed over the years. When students would ask me how would you do it? How did you do it? I always kind of felt my answer was always about productivity. I don't know why, it's just where my mind went, and it could be wrong, could have been the wrong way to answer the question. But the way that I answer it is, how do you get more efficient? Because a side hustle is like what you're doing on the side. And I'm not here to advocate, you know, um, doing that during your day job or anything like that. Like what you're really trying to do is how do you manage that on the side? So number one is picking the right side hustle. Side hustles have, I believe, follow three pillars. One is that they are easy to manage, meaning you can do this yourself. One is that they are easy to understand, meaning if you're creating a new industry, a new vertical, you just don't have time to do that, right? Like you need something that your customer base understands, and that's not part of the solution you're solving. And the third is that they have to be an easy path to profitability, meaning unit one, day one you make money because you don't have time to amass 10,000 customers first and foremost, and then you're going to make money at scale. So picking the right company or picking the right business for a side hustle is one of them. The second thing is to not put all your eggs in the fact that the next business you pick is going to be the business. I believe entrepreneurship is a muscle. You have to exercise it. You have to keep doing it. Um, we hear about Mark Zuckerberg being the CEO of Facebook after, dropping out of Harvard at 19, and that is an anomaly. Most people have to try and try and try again, only because I don't believe there's a better way to learn it than to experience it, to make mistakes. And so you need time to do that. And I am also an anomaly because basically the second company I ever started is the one I still, do today. And that is luck, straight luck. I will put it where it should be, which is I got lucky, and I will fully acknowledge that. It is not what I would preach or practice or recommend. In fact, maybe I'd be better off if I had started and failed a couple more times and I would have learned more. Um, and I usually couch that in like Underground failed a few times along the way in different ways, and like we learned from it and moved on. And the third thing is in terms of like balancing that is like productivity. How do you get more efficient? I learned a lot of tools. I'm a big believer in productivity and ways to get more efficient. And the age of AI is making like running a side hustle and side business even more practical for a single person. How you can manage more with less is like I'm still scratching the surface on it. So um, I'll pause there and we'll keep it going.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. And building off of that, Hallie, I have a question for you. Um, how long should an individual work on their business idea while employed full time before deciding to commit to entrepreneurship? And how should they approach this transition professionally? So, connected to the question that Rishi answered with a little bit of a twist to it.
Great question. I think the how long depends on your financial picture. So, like for me, the length of time of the 2 years was the length of time it was going to take me to make the same amount of money that I was making at the university where I was, working. So it depends on if you want to say match it up, and you're working, it could be a couple of years. You want to give yourself some time. So for example, you might give yourself at least 6 months to a year to even test things out and then go from there. And then sorry, what was the second part of the question, Kira?
No problem. How
Oh,
should
the
they approach
transition.
this transition?
Yep. So be really practical about things. Shark Tank is fun. I watch it all the time, but per Rishi's, what he said, those are the anomaly. So I would approach it as saying, is there anything I can do in my current job or where I'm working now that I can build my strengths up, get some experience that might relate to what I'm going to be doing, and then work on that on the side, and then decide and say, for example, like I actually asked if I could cut back my hours and still work there, but more part-time while I was continuing to grow my business. So there's different options there. Or you might say, okay, I'm going to save up this much, then I'm going to quit my job and move into this. But I am a big fan of doing it on the side, like Rishi said, and growing it that way.
That's great. Thank you. And for everyone who has questions, please submit your questions in the Q&A. And then if you see a question in the Q&A that you also want to hear us respond to, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and we'll manage some of the questions that way. All right. So we have one that just came in from a recent grad. So the question is, being a recent grad, I am told it just takes experience. When identifying our knowledge gaps, how do the panelists recommend we continue learning outside of formal classes?
I'll just say a couple quick and then Rishi might have something too. So I'm a big fan of LinkedIn Learning and Coursera and taking courses there. And my guess would be that there's going to be some entrepreneurship courses as well. General Assembly has courses that are local, live, in person. It may be that you look at your community college, the Small Business Association in your community, that's government funded. They might have entrepreneurship courses as well. So I would do as much of that as you can. Talk with entrepreneurs about their experiences as well. And then, like we said, test it out a little bit too.
This Question asker is someone who I'm very familiar with. She is a former student and someone I would actually see every Friday, even after a student. So hi, Gianna. Um, and I'll preach the same thing I said in class, which is I there's formal classes and Hallie mentioned some of them, but really it's just like e- exposing yourself to as many sources as possible. I tend to do it through social media. I follow a lot of people. I read a lot of articles. I tend to like short snippets of information and then deep dives after that fact. Um, classes is one way to do it. Um, and like online classes, formal classes, and then network, right, is just like who you're around and who you're who you're developing experiences with. And I tell this to a lot of students is like I believe the reason you join uh, e entrepreneurship clubs in school is not because like it teaches you exactly how to be an entrepreneur. It's being around other people that are interested in it and developing the discussions and learning from them. It's just like a nice way to fast track that. Then in the real world, you're just like not around those people. Like you don't have this like ability to just go find them. So you actually have to go out and find those groups and find those places. It's a lot harder out off campus than it is on campus.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, another question, and they're coming in fast and furious. Can you give us a sense of what the day-to-day job is like for someone starting a business? What are the main tasks you spend time on?
So really quickly, I would say like building the structure and building out what I was offering. So for example, I needed a process to kind of coach people through, like what are the materials I need, et cetera. But then also like open a bank account and, so I would say it touches on pretty much everything. When you're a solopreneur, you're doing all of it. You're doing the financials, you're doing the operations, you're doing the sales and the marketing. And I still do all of those things. I get support now with all of them. But one of the things about being an entrepreneur that I didn't expect was how much marketing and selling I needed to be doing to get things off the ground. So the typical day is really broken out into touching all aspects of the business for me.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah, I think that's great. I know we have other questions, so I won't chime in, but it's definitely the only thing I'd add is it's different for everybody, but I would say be ready to be a firefighter. You're putting out fires, you're doing everything. It is not a pyramid where you're at the top. It's upside down pyramid where everything comes down onto you. That's the way I look at it.
So, building off of everything coming down to you, do you have any ideas? Actually, that wasn't a great transition once I ask you this question. But what are some financial sources that people can tap into? Are there any, big ones that you all can think of, or even niche financial services that you can think of?
Yeah, this was what I was stumbling on before, and I have no experience with, but like there's those GoFundMe websites out there. Again, that might be a little Shark Tanky and kind of pie in the sky. Um, I feel like the Small Business Association, in some cases, like in your local area, may be a place to go to ask about that. And there might be some specific entrepreneur, like I know within Atlanta, there's the Tech Village, and of course, that's for tech startups. But see if there are any startup like incubators or anything like that in your local area too.
Yeah, this is a difficult question. Obviously, why it's a question, because it depends on your industry, it depends on your location, it depends on your level of experience, et cetera. Um, Generally speaking, the kind of path to entrepreneurship that I tend to align with and advocate for, side hustle, is not one that inspires like major investment and funding sources. And by design, if you're going to take money from somebody, then it's hard to say, oh, and but I have this other focal point that needs to be my main thing. So like by design, it's not, I don't advocate that you receive a lot of funding if you are, or investment if you are side hustle. So that doesn't mean you don't need a little bit of money to start the business, and that's when you reach out to friends and family or a crowd, Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Crowdfunding is a great way to start up a side hustle, especially if you have an idea that really is killer and resonates with people and solves a problem, right? Because then you use the crowd, your customer base, to validate that. And if they don't validate it, then maybe you should rethink it. So, a lot of research, a lot, and the SBA and other places that do microloans and things like that for new ideas, that's definitely a great place to go to.
Thank you. This question is directed at Hallie. Hallie, can you talk a little bit about, I'm so sorry, I lost it, tips on how to set a compensation structure when you're first starting out? Where do you research to find, to do benchmarking and things of that nature?
Yep. So I actually answered that person a little
Oh,
bit
I'm so
directly.
sorry. Thank you.
No, no, it's fine. I'm doing more work. I hope that's not worse.
No,
Um,
it's fine. Thank you.
but this is where, with a lot of these things too, I think you can leverage AI to find funding sources and think about like, um, you can use salary.com to find salaries, but that's a little bit different. But those are some of the things I've suggested.
That's great. Thank you. So, what recommendations do you have for anyone who's currently unemployed and wants to get into entrepreneurship? So, we talked about if you are employed already, should they find a job first and then explore entrepreneurship as a side hustle? So, if you need to get some revenue coming in, any tips to get that going if you currently are unemployed?
I would get a job just because it's less pressure on the side hustle and you don't want to come across as desperate and you want to think the side hustle through and do things in the right way. That's my vote.
Okay. Next question, and there are some really good ones. Rishi, can you talk a little bit about how you transitioned to being an investor?
Yeah, so for me, it was not job to entrepreneur. Oh, sorry, into an investor. Got it. Apologies. So how did I transition to that? Well, for me, it was actually similar to what there was a previous question about how you get more experience. And for me, this was my business school. This is how I looked at it. I started putting a little bit of money into other companies because I felt like I learned that way the best. It opened up doors for me, and I was able to like put money in and get a lot back. And that when I say get a lot back, I wasn't getting money back, I was getting knowledge back essentially. I was getting insight to different problems and how that works. So I was developing experience through the network, but I tend to learn better when I have some skin in the game, so to speak. Not everyone has that opportunity. That comes in different ways. It doesn't mean you can't learn other ways or that that's not practical. But for me, I ended up looking opportunities would come my way, and I was able to like learn to evaluate them and then go from there. I think things have changed over the years, like the insight and the feedback, the dollars I was investing, it doesn't give me the same insight today in 2025 as it did when I started, and that happens with everything. But um, that is kind of like how I got into investing was really about like being more involved with other businesses outside of my main business, but not having the time. It wasn't efficient for me to go start six more businesses. So this was my way to expand and learn more.
Thank you. So we'll ask two more questions and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. So, first one, how do you structure your work so that you actually have downtime, personal time, and social time? When I'm responsible, I work constantly because I can always do just one more thing. Would love your guidance on this.
I'll say one thing quickly because this was something I had to learn is set certain days of the week that you might be doing certain tasks and also during the course of those days. Now, as Rishi said, you're a firefighter, so that's not always going to stick to it, but I would say like I'm going to coach, for example, on these days of the week, and these days are for admin time. If you can create some kind of structure as best as you can, that will help you focus your thinking on each type of task as well.
I agree with that for sure. I think the way that I view this question is this, there's always a question about work-life balance. And for me, I believe that the balance is in the balance of being able to do both at the same time. You are a firefighter, and problems don't only get addressed between 9 and 5. It's all about priority evaluation and when you have to tackle things. And that's just the thing you have to embrace. And either you love that, that's for you, like being able to and wanting to do that. Yeah, it's not always the best when you have to deal with a problem on Christmas Eve or whatever your birthday or whatever it might be. But either you would take it and you'd enjoy it, or that's not for you. And if it's not for you, that's totally fine. It just might not be that entrepreneurship is what you're, cut out for.
100%. That because I can deal with that too. I'm okay with it because I love it.
Well, I'm learning I'm not an entrepreneur. Okay, so last question. I hear a lot that persistence and resilience is key when starting and growing a business. On the lows, days, weeks, years, what kept you going rather than going back to working for a company or folding that company and starting a new one? How do you keep going?
I mean, that's the question right there. That is the kit and caboodle. There's no 100% answer. I will answer that question with something that I have to remind myself every single day because it's never easier. And so I'll say this. I heard Dick Costolo, U of M alum, former CEO of Twitter, back when it was Twitter, well known in the tech world. I heard him at a fireside chat at Ross. I was just sitting in the audience, and he was asked like what was the best piece of advice that he's ever given somebody, and he talked about how he gave a kid who was in Y Combinator that like a kid asked him what was the one piece of advice he'd give him, and the advice he gave is like it never gets easier. The grass is never greener. When you think you have it figured out, the next year you grow and your problems double, triple, whatever it might be. That's kind of daunting to understand that like it'll never get better. But there's another way to look at it, which is it's never like you're always having to grind. You're always going to be grinding. So your low days, weeks, whatever this year, you're gonna laugh at that problem in 2 years. And you're like, what about the problems I have now? And you probably have that in your own life already. So there's two ways to look at that. It never gets easier. That's like, oh, that's scary. But the other way is like it never gets easier, meaning like what you're dealing with now, if you can figure it out, it'll be like things that other people couldn't figure out, and that's what leaves them behind or like forces them into a different path or whatever and lets you go on. So that doesn't mean it doesn't always happen, and it doesn't mean that 20, 25, 30, 35 years later things change and all of a sudden three or four things go wrong. Most entrepreneurs feel like, I find myself in this world too, if three or four things go wrong in sequence, like your great business can be a horrible business or it can have a lot of problems. That is a real thing that lots of people deal with. So look at the positive side. I'm curious what Hallie has to say about it too.
I would say loving actually and enjoying the challenge. Like I love the challenge and love to solve the problem. And then a passion for or belief and strong belief in what you do. That's what kept me from staying at it or going back to work.
Thank you so much. And I am so sorry that we weren't able to get to all of the questions. We'll see if we can squeak a couple more responses out of today's presenters. But the good thing is that they want to keep talking to you. So first, please join me in extending a genuine and heartfelt thank you to Hallie and Rishi for being with us today. You can give them the hearts, the claps, all of the things. You're welcome to connect with Rishi on LinkedIn. So if you have a question that you weren't able to get to Rishi during this time, go ahead and connect with Rishi on LinkedIn, and we'll go ahead and put that information in the chat. We'll also share Rishi's information in the follow-up email we'll send you tomorrow. When you reach out to Rishi via LinkedIn, please make sure to reference this webinar, the Alumni Association of the University of Michigan webinar, so that he can prioritize you and get to your questions before somebody else's. You can, if you'd like to connect with Hallie, you can schedule a complimentary consultation with her on her website, and we'll provide that information in the chat as well and in our follow-up. And yes, so those are the ways that you can keep the conversation going with both of them. Thank you, Hallie. Thank you, Rishi, for your time, your expertise, and for giving back to the University of Michigan community. We are so grateful to have you with us because you truly are leaders in your field. And so we know you have a lot of things to do. So thanks for making us a priority. We want to remind everyone that a recording of today's session will be sent as a follow-up email. And remember to tap into U of M resources for alumni entrepreneurs through the Zell-Lurie Institute for Entrepreneurship by subscribing to their newsletter or checking out their website, and we'll include that information in our follow-up email tomorrow. And finally, please share your feedback with us using the survey that we'll send to you and is also in the chat. There's a lot in the chat. We love hearing your feedback, and we actually read it and we use it. So if you want to hear more from Rishi about a side hustle, let us know. And maybe we've already started working with Rishi to see if we can get him back with us in the future. If you want to hear something else from Hallie, just let us know and we'll do our best to make it happen. All right. Thank you everyone for your time and being with us today. And of course, and forever, go Blue.